This is MRC UnCensored. I'm Dan Schneider. I am joined today by my boss, Brent Bozell. I joined MRC now just over a year ago. I have been in this town for a long time. I'm a cause-driven guy. I've always wanted to go to the places where I thought I could be of greatest value to saving America, for the ideas of our nation's founding. I wanted to come here because Brent Bozell, more than anybody else I know, has vision for how to do that. In 1987, he founded the Media Research Center because he saw the threat that a biased media had against our democracy. More recently, 5 or 6 years ago, he was ahead of the curve in understanding the role of big tech and the threat that big tech could pose. Even though they got great products, the threat big tech could pose, again, in denying people the ability to participate in self-government. And more recently, he again saw, before anybody else, the threat of artificial intelligence, the threat that it would be used against the American people and against freedom. Brent Bozell, it's an honor to be with you.
Well, I'm glad you're working with us. That's all I can say. I'm glad you're with us.
Let's start in reverse order. Artificial intelligence. The co-founder of Google, Larry Page, said that he wanted artificial intelligence to be a digital god, that when we had questions, it could give us all the right answers. Artificial intelligence is an important tool, but so many people are not understanding its threat to humanity, who we are as human beings. What are your thoughts on artificial intelligence?
When Larry Page says that he thinks AI should be a digital god, I don't know. I suspect he doesn't believe in God, but he believes in small g God, and you can substitute the word truth for that. He wants it to be digital truth. He wants man to think the way he thinks, in the perspective of the big tech, Silicon Valley, radical left think. What we've had to deal with up until this point has been a bias against speech, censorship of speech. Where AI is truly dangerous is that it is going to teach us how to think. You're going to look at something, you're going to believe it's objective truth because it's going to hit you from every which direction. Because with AI, you can have the power to do that. If you think big tech has power now, censoring speech worldwide, imagine what's going to happen when AI does the exact opposite, which is to insert truth as they see it into the public conversation. Therefore, when AI tells you the world is flat, what's going to happen is, in time, society is going to believe the world is flat because everywhere you turn for information, truth says it's flat.
So you've used a gigantic word that takes 5 letters to write, truth. Transcendent truth. You and I are both people of faith. And you're describing that AI wants to replace God, this idea that there is truth out there. The other side of that coin is that as human beings, the pursuit of that truth is so critical to who we are, and AI seems to be abolishing the entire pursuit of it.
Sure,
They're just going to spoon feed us and say, this is what you are to believe.
You're not going to learn critical thinking because there's only one perspective on it. You know, this started back in the early 90s. I remember NBC News saying the climate debate was settled, and they weren't going to allow another perspective. Same thing with gay rights.
Wait, just that. The climate debate is over. That's when they were saying that the Earth is cooling.
Yeah.
That we're going to freeze to death.
No, they were warming. It was warming that decade.
Okay. You forget which way it goes.
We did a study on the New York Times years ago, going back to the 1800s. It is amazing. The reason is climate change is they can't make up their minds because it goes cooling, warming, cooling, warming, cooling. Climate change, and now we're done.
Right. They had to change the title.
Yeah, so NBC decided that, and the next truth became gay rights. The gay issue settled. No more discussion on this. You're not allowed to insert the other perspective on things. What AI does is across the board on anything it chooses to do. He with the power to control AI controls truth.
Okay.
So you're not allowed to pursue truth anymore.
Just a practical example, because just today, the New York Post published our piece. Google has its own artificial intelligence tool called Bard. And we tested this out. If you go on Bard and ask, what is Hamas? Google's own artificial intelligence will say, sorry, I don't have the capacity to tell you that. But Google's Bard can tell us what the Irish Republican Army is, and what Black Lives Matter is, and what Antifa is, and what ISIS is. Essentially, any organization or any terrorist organization that's not attacking Israel right now, Bard can tell you what it is.
And the other issue you found was Jerusalem.
What's Jerusalem? What is the capital of Israel?
Bard knows the capital of any country in the world, except for Israel. It doesn't know if Jerusalem. Why? We know why. This is what I mean. This is what I mean. And when that quote unquote truth is presented everywhere, I think about children. This is what really frightens me. A new generation of children are going to be raised, and we've seen it with all these different things the left are doing, where they're going out of their way to prevent the conservative perspective to enter the conversation. So they censor it at every opportunity. AI replaces it.
I know some people are concerned that AI will operate independently and take over the world and kill us all. I think the much bigger threat is that it's the people who write the programs.
God, there's no such thing as independence. There's a ground zero to everything. There's a person who programmed it. I remember having a meeting at the Heritage Foundation some years ago with two vice presidents of Google who looked at a small group of us, looked us right in the eye, and one of the vice presidents said, "You cannot change algorithms." That's kind of like saying you can't tie your shoelaces.
Right.
Once they're tied, you can't untie them. People program things all the time. I could, if I wanted to, have an AI program for the Media Research Center that would reinvent the media bias debate and project truths that were lies. I could do it if I wanted to. We never would, but I could. But so what you've got is a left that says it's independent when it's not. They programmed it.
Well, you are my boss. You write my paycheck. So
we should make that our virtual too.
Right. But you did, in fact, see that big tech, the Chinese Communist Party, they've got their own sort of artificial intelligence project, and then big tech woke executives do too. So we've seen how big tech operates, and you saw it early on. You launched Free Speech America several years ago, understanding the threat that big tech posed to freedom.
Exactly, Dan, exactly how different are we from China in this respect? China owns TikTok. TikTok has a massive censorship operation going against conservative thought. China won't allow TikTok in China.
Right.
They don't want to have their own citizens to be to be approached by this. Okay, big tech is doing the exact same thing. It too is calling balls and strikes. You have to ask yourself the question ultimately, who's more powerful, the federal government on one coast or the big tech on the other? Because the federal government can pass legislation and all that power, but TikTok or big tech can tell you what is allowed and what is not allowed to be said. So they have got an extraordinary power, which I believe it's, if you look historically, there have been several institutions that have worked outside of the three branches of government that have had equal power. In the late 1800s, it was big business with the big robber barons. In the mid 1900s, it was big labor that had an inordinate power. Then it became the news media. Now it is definitely big tech. Big tech is on par with them.
Oh, well, let's get practical.
So what's the difference between big tech and China? Not much.
Yeah, so let's get practical. You saw this well ahead of others. The rest of the world caught up with you. when we saw what happened in the 2020 election. The Hunter Biden laptop story, Emma Morris and Miranda Devine made it a big deal, the laptop from hell, and big tech shut it down. Big tech censored it. I think 45.1, this was an MRC poll, 45.1% of Biden voters had never even heard of the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Yeah, I mean, look, as conservatives, we all believe going into the election, we can debate all day long whether the elections were stolen at the ballot box. Where you don't have any debate is the role that the information media had, whether the news or social media were concerned. No debate here. Conservatives believed on election day that the American people knew that Joe Biden was a crook, that he was the big guy. Hunter Biden's laptop was there. No one was disputing it. And to this day, no one's ever disputed the laptop. That is
Hunter Biden has admitted it.
Yeah, that is absolute fact that it existed. So we believe, well, there's no way the American people are going to vote for Joe Biden. Well, guess what? They did. So we did a survey. We have been monitoring the news media all throughout this, and we saw how they had put a complete kibosh on the Hunter Biden story, deliberately not reporting it. Imagine if it was Donald Trump Jr. who was doing snorting coke with whores in around the country, what they might have to say about it. In any event, and with Donald Trump being the big guy. So we looked at the news media. The news media put the complete kibosh on it. But now we know that Twitter put the kibosh on it, because we were saying it they had, and now it's proven. Elon Musk proved it. Mark Zuckerberg, a year and a half later, came forward and admitted Facebook also had done it. He said the Justice Department told him that it was Russian collusion, but they had done it. So what effect, what did it have? We looked at the 7 battleground states of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And to see what Biden's voters thought about this, 45.1% of Biden's voters had never heard of Hunter Biden and the laptop. 45%.
Almost half of his voters had never even heard of it.
So then when you told them what it was and asked them, would you have voted for Joe Biden? 9.4% of Biden's voters would not, almost 10%. You then take that and you put it across those 7 battleground states, Donald Trump easily, handedly would have won Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, would have won every single battleground state, a minimum of 317 electoral votes. That's the power that they have.
Now, I'm going to turn straight to our viewers. We can look at how big tech executives funnel their money to Democrats. We can talk about the employees of these big tech firms and how they give only to Democrats. But when Parler was out there trying to be a platform so people could learn about the Hunter Biden laptop story, Google, Apple, and Amazon in a nanosecond destroyed Parler. They took it off the planet. They destroyed it so that Joe Biden would win the presidency.
Yeah, immediately. I mean, they made no bones about it. They were not going to allow another viewpoint on this. Hunter Biden was not to be discussed, period. You also have to ask yourself the question, Dan, when they played this kind of role in presidential politics, you and I have to follow rules and laws as to how much we can contribute to it. This is an in-kind contribution in hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right.
That they're doing. If you and I wanted to get that perspective out ourselves to the American people, it would cost us hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising to do it. They did it, snapping their fingers. They get around all the campaign finance laws, and they are playing the most important role of them all in electing candidates. You got to review this. You've got to review this at the federal level.
All right, so we've had state attorneys general bring litigation. We've got lots of improvements going on. I'll just say the basis of all of these good actions that we see is censor track.
Yeah.
The cases that have been brought rely on our database. We now have over 6,000 documented cases of censorship. We've got a team that investigates and finds these things, promotes it, promotes the evidence of it, and it's used in Capitol Hill testimony, it's used in Supreme Court briefs. It's really valuable stuff. Why did you create CensorTrack?
Because big tech lies through its teeth. When they go to Capitol Hill and they testify, one executive after another will maintain we're nothing but an objective platform. People put their information on there. There's a grandiose debate. If you don't like what's on there, don't blame us. Don't blame the messengers. We allowed it. When in fact the opposite is true. And they've got what's called Section 230 protection. Because they're a platform and not a publisher like the New York Times or CNN, they can't be held legally liable. That's the law. Now, if they weren't objective, they would be liable for their actions. That could be the death knell of them because of the kind of stuff that they're doing. So they go on there and they argue, we are objective, we have no agenda, we don't censor anybody. Well, guess what? We decided to do CensorTrack and to look at it. These aren't 6,000 crazy allegations. These are 6,000 documented examples. There are many, many more that have been thrown in, and we haven't gone with them. We've only gone with the ones that we say we can dominate, we can document. And it's Republican leaders, it is candidates, it is conservative organizations, it's conservative leaders, it's religious leaders, it's foreign policy leaders. You know, Hamas killed an Israeli soldier. The son of Benjamin Netanyahu called them terrorist murderers. Hamas remained. Ben Netanyahu's son was knocked off for that. Now, subsequently,
these tech platforms have an agenda.
Yeah, subsequently to that, and Facebook's right, they did take Hamas on. But then Hamas came in a back door. And you can take the Hamas message and you can put it 1,000 different ways on Facebook. Facebook has no problem with that. But call them terrorists? Gone.
So we've got the big tech platforms, and everybody knows who they are. The second follow-up punch is with these various media ratings organizations like NewsGuard and Ad Fontes that exist not to actually rate the reliability of media, but to direct people away from conservative media and into the arms of the left.
Yeah, I mean, the fact-checking is another just really nefarious activity of the far left. And we've been documenting this for years. If it's groups like Snopes and others who fact-check conservatives regularly, nobody fact-checks the fact-checkers. And regularly we find things that they're doing that are incorrect, but they're considered God. Now you've got, with technology, you've got these new things arriving that people don't know about. NewsGuard and Ad Fontes is the newest one. The NewsGuard is that which, if you go on a Microsoft computer, it tells you in a rating system, green, yellow, red light, who you can, who you can't trust. Completely subjective. Right. But now look, I've got no problem, none whatsoever, with anybody doing that. So long as you disclose your agenda, you disclose what your biases are. We're all biased. If I did something like that and I said this is objective truth and there's no bias in there, I'd be intellectually dishonest. And that's the problem with these people. They're not just hypocritical, they're intellectually dishonest.
So we all know that Hamas launched a missile and it hit a hospital and
a parking lot.
A parking lot in front of a hospital, and several in the media tried to jump and blame Israel for it, but then all of the evidence came out. NewsGuard rated the outlets that claimed that Israel was responsible for it, and guess what? NewsGuard still claims all those outlets are 100% reliable.
Yeah.
Ad Fontes has been whistling past the graveyard, and it hasn't even rated those outlets that falsely claimed Israel was responsible for it. These outlets cherry-pick the stories they're going to rate. They then use their own subjectivity. They are designed specifically to harm conservatives and to help liberals.
You're Jewish, I'm Catholic, but we are both fervently of the belief that what you're saying is a dangerous, dangerous anti-Semitism. It's re-emerging in places like Europe, but it is emerging in a very, there's been examples of that in the past, but nothing like what we're seeing now, where Hamas is being portrayed as Palestine and Palestinians, when you've got to separate the two of them. There's one thing, which is the innocent peasants, the innocent people who live there. It's another thing, a 150,000-man terrorist army. Never mind Hezbollah to the north of Israel. These are terrorist organizations. When you have AP refusing to use the word terrorist to apply to them, I think that's anti-Semitic. After 9/11, I remember Reuters famously said that they weren't going to label Osama bin Laden a terrorist because they said one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. This guy had just slaughtered how many thousand Americans? Now you've got Hamas that committed the most gruesome crime in recent memory. It wasn't just that they killed 1,400 people, it's that they slaughtered 1,400 people. And we now know from documents and from testimony of captured Hamas terrorists that they were under instructions to be as violent and as vicious as humanly beheading 40 babies. Yeah. Can you get more cruel? Can you get more evil? Adolf Hitler didn't do this. And they're doing this, and yet you've got the news media that's saying, hold on. Don't be in a rush to call them terrorists.
Yeah. Brent, as we wrap up, the Republicans are electing a new Speaker of the House. Whoever that is. Right now, Mike Johnson is a leading candidate. He's a good conservative who understands big tech bias, media bias. Whoever's the next speaker, what advice would you give that person?
Well, the first thing I will say is that I hope it is Mike Johnson for a number of different reasons. He's a good man, but he also understands this issue as well as, and perhaps better than anybody on Capitol Hill. He understands the power that the far left has to derail anything they're trying to do on Capitol Hill. He understands this. What advice would I would tell him? I would tell him in your things to do list, you got to make the media the number one issue. You've got to confront them, and where they are dishonest and where they are doing things that I believe are illegal, you've got to call them out. Haul them up on Capitol Hill. Present the evidence about how they're turning the election. Look, they're doing it already. I've got to give you this quick number because it's a CNN poll. I don't like to quote CNN unless I like the polls. But listen to these numbers. 61% of the American people believe that Joe Biden was involved in Hunter Biden's business affairs while he was vice president. Of that 61%, 98% believe it was either unethical or illegal. But of that 98%, 90% of them were Republicans. Only 28% of Democrats believe that Joe Biden was doing anything illegal or unethical because they don't know. And here we go. It's 2020 all over again. So I would tell Mike Johnson, you've got to confront this because they are more powerful than you are.
Yeah, so those were a lot of numbers, but that analysis tells me two things. First, Democrats, again, are largely ignorant of the facts, and those who know the facts don't want to believe the facts.
No, they don't. You tell them that, and they'll just say, well, it's just crazy conservatives that are talking.
Right.
And never mind that you've got, look at James Comer and the information he's coming out with. I mean, it seems like once a week there's another bombshell, another piece of evidence. All you need to know about Joe Biden is one number, 20. 20 LLCs in the Biden family web of companies. There's only one reason why somebody has 20 LLCs, and that's to hide money. There's no other reason.
Well, what is the family business?
Yeah, what have they done?
What is the Biden family business?
Yes, yeah.
There's one product.
Yeah. I mean,
that's Joe Biden.
I mean, James Comer just came out with, again, covered by absolutely no one in the media. James Comer received a payment of $200,000 from one of these strange foreign companies the very same day he received it. He wrote a check to Joe Biden for $200,000. If that doesn't smell to high heaven, then I don't have any smell buds in me. But that's the kind of thing that, you think of Richard Nixon, you think of Watergate, and you think about, an 18.5-minute missing tape, which is really with the Rosemary Wood missing tape. That's ultimately is what drove him out of office, was that 18.5 minute where they had deliberately done something incorrect. Now, what you've got with Joe Biden's history, you've got years of 18.5 minutes. You've got years of what is demonstrably illegal activity when you bring your son with you on Air Force Two and he conducts business deals with those governments that you're dealing with. You now have evidence that whether it is Ukraine, Russia, China, one country after another, where Joe Biden was taking Air Force Two, son Hunter Biden was making deals with governments and making millions of dollars in the process. Utter corruption. So you ask the question, and I'm going to carry on too long, but why? Why does he do it? Because he believes he can. Why do the people do what they do on the far left, which is so blatant? Because they believe they can. Because they're not going to be held to account.
The media is going to bury it in their bias. Big tech is going to censor us. Brent Bozell, the Media Research Center, has been the tip of the spear in the fight for freedom, for democracy, for allowing people to participate in our form of government. Brent, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for everything you do at the MRC.
And thank you for being part of us.
Thank you.